Welcome to Keep Me Posted with Planet Aid. And today we are talking with Anneve Waith, coming from Planet Aid's corporate sales department. And Anneve is actually our permit compliance specialist here at Planet Aid. We're going to be talking to her about her very important job because Anneve really is one of the people who kind of keep us in line as far as the compliance of the entire organization. So, cannot understate how, or overstate, I should say, how important her job is. Anneve, welcome to Keep Me Posted with Planet Aid. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Oh, very good. So excited to have you. Because you know what? When you were first hired, I remember saying to myself, what is that position? Because it's just one of those things that I just wasn't familiar with. So can you kind of just elaborate on what your position is with Planet 8?
Yeah, of course. So more heavy on the permitting than the compliance part of
Mhm.
things, but to be honest, permitting is compliance, right?
Mm,
Without us being compliant with these municipalities, towns, counties, we cannot put our bins there. And we don't want to be not compliant with them because that brings issues to us later on, right? They'll
right.
they'll ask us to remove our bins, we'll be fined, things like that.
Mm,
But my position is a little bit of everything to be honest, wrapped up in everything because permitting is so large, meaning that every single state does something different, every town does something different. So I get the pleasure of doing a lot of research and making sure that I talk with the towns and municipalities to make sure that we're placing the bins in the right locations. We're following all of their guidelines, and then we're paying them, of course, because that's one of the most important parts too. So
very good, very good. Now, you're certainly one of the things that I've noticed about you is you are certainly not at your desk a lot. A lot of times you'll be here in the morning and then you'll be gone in the afternoon, or
yeah.
maybe you'll be here today and you'll be gone tomorrow. So, tell me a little bit about why your job, your position is not as sedentary as many other office jobs would be.
So the biggest thing is people work better when they see you in person.
Mhm.
And I also am a firm believer that sometimes you ask better questions when you're in person.
Mm,
And Uli, my manager, is a firm believer of that too. A lot of times when we have phone conversations with these towns, I'm not saying the right things or they're not understanding me correctly. And a lot of this is new. I'd say permitting in general has been kind of a newish thing for a lot of these towns in the last couple years.
mm.
So a lot of the times they don't have the answers and they need to do some research too. So being there in person is way more efficient. So the reason why I'm always moving is because sometimes I can't get the answers by just doing research on my laptop. Sometimes I have to go in person and talk to them. So I love it. It keeps me busy. It is not boring to say the least. So yeah, so that's why I'm a mover and a shaker.
Yeah, I love that. Mover and a shaker. I need. Why does Planet 8 need permits, as to say, and to be specific, what entities are we seeking permits for? I know that we talked about the bins, but there's some other things that you need it for as well.
Yeah. So we need them for also our larger kind of donation centers, because those tend to take up, of course, larger amounts of space. And some of the times when we're working with shopping centers and big companies, like for example, I don't know, any shopping center around here. They're owned by some big commercial company. We're taking space that they need to make sure that they can give us those parking spaces. They're allowed to. They're excess, things like that. So permits are important not only for the bins but for those donation centers. They're also important because a lot of the times these towns are dealing with smaller areas that we're taking up space in general for things that could be buildings. So it's just overall it's over encompassing. So I don't only just make sure the bins are permitted, I make sure our donation centers are permitted, and that we're just fully compliant with the town's ordinances in general.
So nobody's just dropping off donation bins and saying, oh, this is a good place for it.
Yeah, no, we want to stay away from that. And one of the big things that I can say that we are working towards is having a really good relationship with these towns, and building a relationship where we're kind of creating some of these ordinances and we're helping them figure out how we can stay compliant and other companies can stay compliant too.
Right. And that's really as it should be, because Planet Aid really is a pioneer in this donation bin business.
Yeah.
So I imagine that compliance gets to be very legalistic. Am I
Mhm.
right?
Yes, it can be.
Okay. So you're really kind of, you said you talked about the research aspect of it. What are you researching? Like, where would you go to research whatever you need to research?
Yeah, so I try to start with the actual website from the town. So someone will come to me and they'll say, "Hey, we're interested in, let's say, putting something in Baltimore County," and then of course I have to get them to be even more specific than just saying Baltimore County because there's even smaller towns within the county, right? We know there's Towson and Parkville, and sometimes we call those municipalities, and sometimes they have different rules.
Mm,
So it starts there. Let me figure out exactly where you want to place the spin. From there, I go to the township or I go to the municipality website, and then I just look on their ordinances. I type in keywords donation, donation bin, clothing donation, and see if any of those rules come up. And if they do, that's great for us because then I have everything laid out right there, and then I can move on to the next step, which is mostly me calling the municipality themselves because a lot of the times the language is not always so clear. And again, we want to make sure we're following every step of the way. Then from there, I will go as far as talking to the zoning officer to make sure that we're placing our bins and our donation centers in the right spaces. And if they've had any bad experiences in the past, making sure that we don't do those things that were bad experiences. So it's every single bin is a different step.
mhm.
But that's basically where I start. I always start with looking at where I can find on paper and then moving on to conversations.
So nobody is perfect. There have probably been mistakes in the past, but what's the first line of correction? Is it where do you go within our organization? Do you go to an operations manager, or what's your first line of defense?
My first line of defense is always operation managers. Most of the time, they will refer me to a territory manager because they are obviously our boots on the ground. They're seeing everything firsthand, and they will tell me their experiences because most of the time they also have been the person to go in front of the county or the town or the city too. So that's where I go for the correction. And then obviously, if things need to be moved and placed in different locations, our operation manager is the one who communicates to their team to make sure that happens.
Very good. So I know that you went, I believe it was in the summer, to New York for the. I'm going. I hope I don't mess this up. The ICSC conference.
Yeah, you did good. That's what it was.
Okay. Okay. So the ICSC conference. Now, you talked a lot about like just one-on-one talking with people. You did a lot
Mhm.
of that there. You're also going to be going to Las Vegas, I believe.
Fingers
And
crossed. I'm not sure for sure, but
okay,
fingers
okay.
crossed.
So tell me, when you go to these events like this, what's the purpose, and what are you hoping to get out of it? You, from your perspective, as far as the permits and the compliance and that kind of thing.
One of the things that I really enjoyed in New York, and I didn't get that firsthand experience before, was hearing other people's stories of the issues that they've had, and then realizing that, like you said, we're pioneers. So Planet Aid creating this position in the first place is huge because a lot of these bigger companies haven't had the chance to deal with someone that does the permitting for them. So a lot of the times they don't want to work with other companies because they are the ones that get fined. They are the ones that get these notifications that these things need to be moved. And they get frustrated and they don't want to work with companies like us. So having my face out there and having someone that is saying I deal specifically with this was humongous. And learning about their stories and ways that we can try to prevent an issue moving forward, and how we can present ourselves as a company to other corporate sales teams was huge. So that alone, I got out of that conference, and I'm looking forward to seeing what it looks like in different territories. So New York, the New York ICSC, of course, the majority of the people that were there were from New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and maybe a little bit from Maryland. So it will be really cool to see where our other territories, those conversations with those companies, and the issues and problems they're having as well.
Very good. So one of the things that I think is very important about your job is that you're so you've got to be detail oriented.
Hmm.
So, your tell me a little bit about that as far as that with your personality, because to tell you the truth, me, I don't even want to fill out my benefit stuff a lot of times.
True. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, what if somebody were looking to get a job in permits or compliance or
Yeah.
whatever it might be? Tell me a little bit about what goes into your detail, your detail. I don't know how to say this, orientedness.
Personality. Yeah. Um, so I am a type A personality. That has been beneficial. I did go to law school. I've graduated from law school. So technically I'm a lawyer. I'm not a licensed attorney, but I'm a lawyer. So that has been very beneficial and helpful to a job like this where you have to check and recheck again, right?
Mm,
You don't just submit something right off the bat. You go back, you look, maybe you take your eyes off of it, and you come back and you make sure every detail is perfect. I like that. It's like a game for me.
mm.
So I always describe that to people. Law in general, too, is a game. I know it's not a game with people's livelihood,
Right,
obviously,
right, right.
but it's a game in the sense that it's moving and it's ever changing. And
Yeah.
this job is exactly that, right? I can talk to a town and they can say, well, 2 weeks ago we decided to have a forum and the laws have changed, so now you need to change X, Y, and Z.
Oh
Right.
my
So it's a
goodness.
constant checking and rechecking. So if somebody was interested in a job like this, which is if you're that type of person that can look at something kind of glass half full where you make it into a game, you'll love
Hmm.
this. But it is a constant checking and rechecking and rechecking and rechecking.
By the way,
Um,
we're not saying this because we want to get rid of you. I mean, my
right, right.
goodness.
Hey, whoever's coming
When
next, let me
nobody's
tell you. You know
auditioning,
what
you're not
I'm saying?
auditioning. So let me ask you a question. Your job is not again procuring the bins.
Yeah.
However, you're on our corporate sales team.
Mhm.
Why is this associated with sales?
Um, it's largely associated with sales because without me, most of the time you can't place the bins, right? So we can't get that overall sale if we can't be in those areas. So without my research and me checking those details and having those conversations, unfortunately, we wouldn't even be able to sell our product in the first place, right? Sell our product, but place
Right.
our product.
Hmm.
So I'm kind of the first line of defense, and that's why I'm on the team.
Hmm. Very good. So you all really work hand in hand.
Yep.
Hmm. Okay, so what do you like about your position? I know you've already kind of said some of the things, but if you can wrap it up about your position, what are the main things that kind of keep you coming back every day?
One of the things is I'm a people person. So the fact that I get to interact with people is really really cool, and also I love research. Like I said before, it's constantly changing, and people are like, "Well, we're just talking about donation bins. What do you mean? How is it constantly changing?" Unfortunately, it's affiliated with the law, and the law is ever changing.
Hmm.
So because of that, I know each day that I come in here will not be the same, right? And
Right.
then this company in general, we are not just here in Elkridge, we're in a lot of places.
Hmm.
So getting to do research and learn about different laws and ordinances in different areas, cities, states is also really cool.
You,
So it keeps me busy.
I was going to say you're kind of a legal nerd, aren't you?
Yeah, a little bit, a little bit. Did you catch that? Just a little bit.
um, So, the last thing I think I would like to ask you is what is your why for working at Planet Aid? Because, a lot of people may have um, a desire to help people, and I know that, people don't think of it necessarily as a tie in to the development things that we do. But at the same time, when you place a bin, that helps us to get the funds that are needed to help support certain things. And I'm not saying that's your why, but what is your why?
So I have always really enjoyed public service work. My background, obviously, I went to law school, but I knew that I never wanted to be in corporate America per se. I always wanted to be giving back in some way. So when I saw the opportunity to work at a nonprofit where we are giving back, some people might argue that we're not doing enough locally, but I'm actually a first generation American. My parents are from Trinidad and Tobago, so even the international aspect of it excites me because
Mm,
I see firsthand every time I go back to our country, what used clothing could look like for a lot of kids in need.
mm,
So that's my why. Every day, that's my why. Again, I do want to be a part of the change that we're creating here, right? And we're evolving, right? This company is ever evolving.
mhm.
And so hopefully we are doing more stuff in our backyards down the line, but I can't not show up to work every day and expect something like that to happen. I have to work towards that as well. So that's definitely my why.
Wow, that's great. That's a different perspective. So I really appreciate you
No
sharing that.
problem. No problem.
Annie, thank you so much for joining us on Keep Me Posted with Planet Aid. You actually are a very vital part of our organization, and thank you for everything that you do.
All right. Thank you so much, Monica.
All right, thank you.
Bye.